All right, Shabbos, say good morning. Good morning. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning's share. To thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for Adar Beis, the Schwartzbaum family in memory of Rabbi Aaron Schwartzbaum, Aaron Yosef ben Meir Zichron Livracha, Leah Sol. In the schus of her daughter Ilana Bas Esther's successful surgery and complete refuah shlema, and for a safe return of all of our hostages and hatzlacha for our soldiers. Maya Hoffman in memory of her father Reuven ben Emmanuel Zichron Livracha, and in the merit of hatzlacha, health, and joy for her entire family. Yoel and Sarah Kelman in honor of the birth of their son, and in memory of Staff Sergeant David Sassoon Hashemi Kom Damo, and a late breaking sponsorship as well, Maish Wordesheim, on the occasion of his birthday. Mazel tov, with gratitude to Hashem for bringing me to this 76th year of life and blessing me with such an incredible chevra. Incredible, Maish. Absolutely beautiful, magnificent, incredible. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should bench you with arichos yamim v'shanim, health, hatzlacha, mazel, bracha, and simcha, ad mea v'esim shanim tovos. And it is we who are truly blessed, Baruch Hashem, to have a member of the chevra like you. Let's say with that, let us begin. We also take note that important for us to mark that today is the 180th day of the war, 180th day of captivity for our brothers and sisters, 180th day of Mesiras Nefesh for our precious soldiers. I don't think any of us ever imagined that this current war would go on and would extend for so long. And I don't think any of us thought that the things that we have seen and we have heard and we have experienced over the last 6 months would have ever been part of our individual or collective memory. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu always has incredible plans for Klal Yisrael, and we have no doubt that this is part of His master plan as well, that will only bring us closer to Geula, bring us closer to Achdus, bring us closer to the Beis HaMikdash and Halavai. Yimir Hashem HaKadosh Baruch Hu should bring Yeshuas and Nechamas Nisim and Niflaos and Besoros Tovos for Klal Yisrael B'Karov. We'll say with that, let us begin with a lot to do today, Baruch Hashem. Today's daf is Lamed Hey 35. We are picking up on Lamed Dalet Amud Beis 34, be about 20 lines up from the bottom. So just to very quickly, and it'll go quickly, don't worry, but just to quickly reorient ourselves, just for a moment. If you remember again, we really ended off yesterday with the statement of Rav Huna. And Rav Huna made the statement that will say that halacha l'maisa, right? Remember again, we were introduced to the Mishnah. And in the Mishnah, we were speaking about the concept that if I go ahead and I deposit an object with Ruvain is my shomer china, my unpaid custodian. I then come back to collect the object from Ruvain, and Ruvain says, something happened to it, it's gone, right? Nignavu avdu. Now remember again, I will say, even a shomer chinam, let's say, who is pater, if an object is stolen or lost, so remember, I'm not obligated to just take his word for it. In other words, he has to take a shvuah. He swears that I wasn't negligent, that the object was stolen or lost. So let's say Reuven says again, halacha l'maisa, I don't want to swear, I'm just not interested. I will say, by the way, I've always wondered to myself, obviously, I don't think there's any historical data on this, but I've always wondered to myself, like, how many people took this option of just paying instead of swearing. Swearing is a very big deal. A shavua, when we get to Masech Shavua, we'll discuss this. Shavua, taking an oath, is a dramatically big deal. So I've always wondered to myself, like, how many people chose the option of payment over oath? But in any event, in this case over here, so Reuven decides, you know what, I'm just going to pay. He gives me the $1,000 for the cow. Fine. So we'll say that. So then the Mishnah then went on to talk about, we find the Ganav, who gets the Kefal, who gets the Arba V'Chamisha, fine. Rav Huna just points out something else. Rav Huna says that even if you choose to pay, there's still an oath. There's still an oath. What's the oath? Shvua she'ena birshusi. I swear that I do not have the object in my possession. That's it. Now, what is Rav Huna? Why introduce the shvua? Because there is an overarching concern. What is that overarching concern? That maybe Reuven the Shomer says like this. You know what? I really like the cow, as we talked about yesterday. People grow attachments to livestock, right? So lemaisa again, I go ahead and it's not a dog rant. Right? So lemaisa again, people grow attached. So I'm concerned that maybe Reuven's going to say like this. You know what? I'm keeping the cow. I don't want to be a ganav. So I'm just going to pay. In other words, and a person could really justify that by saying, I'm not depriving Silber of anything. He could take $1,000, go buy a brand new cow for himself, and Shalom al Yisrael. So therefore, Rav Huna says, even if you're going to choose the payment over oath option, you're still obligated to swear that the object is not in your domain. Okay, so that's Rav Huna. Now it says Metzia. Let's go. Hamavis chaver ala mashkon va'avad hamashkon. So we'll say, now watch this. I lend Ruvain money, and I lend him with collateral. About 20 lines are from the bottom, 34b. Right? I go ahead and I lend Ruvain money, and let's say I lend him on collateral. Let's say what happens? So again, I as the lender, am in possession of the collateral. Now what ends up happening? The collateral is lost. And I say, look, here's the deal. I lent you $1,000. The collateral was only worth $500. On the other hand, Reuven, the borrower says, Lo ki ala selah hilvisani alav selah hayashava. So Reuven says that's not true. Reuven says, yes, you lent me $1,000, but the collateral was worth $1,000. So we have machlokes now, not about the debt, a machlokes ultimately again about the value of the collateral. So we'll say, what's the halacha? Pater. Rashi says over here, pater halove min hashvua she'im kan hodaba mixas. So we'll say over here, the borrower is pater from shvua. It's pater from shvua because going to say there's no partial admission over here. So it's interesting. So the borrower himself again is saying, and I will say, the law tends to tilt towards the borrower in this case. Why? Because generally the way that collateral works is how collateral is something you seize in satisfaction of the debt in the event that the borrower can't pay. So by Pashtos, the borrower is saying, look, you lent me $1,000, collateral was worth $1,000, so he's pater from shvua. Next case, shekel hayashava. So we'll say in this case over here, the lender says, I lent you $1,000, and the mashkon, the collateral was worth a shekel, a partial amount. So we'll say in this case over here, the borrower says, I agree to the amount that you paid me, but the collateral wasn't worth a shekel, it was worth 3 dinarim. So we'll say, so in this case over here, what's happening? In this case, the borrower is already admitting that halacha l'maisa, the collateral was not worth the full face value of the debt. In that case, chayiv. Now, b'pashtos, when we say chayiv, we're assuming what it means is borrower is going to have to take a shvua as to the value of the collateral. Next, seleh hilvisani alav, beis hayashava. Next case, lender says, I lent you a selah, and ultimately again the collateral was worth 2 dinarim. So we'll say, so in this case over here, so remember again, so case 3 mirrors case number 1. So remember again, borrower says, I borrowed a selah, and the collateral was worth a selah, pater. So we'll say in that case over there, the borrower doesn't have to swear. What about the case where again borrower says, I lent you a selah, and the collateral was only worth 2? So both say in this case over here, so once again, so borrower is admitting that the collateral was not worth the full value of the debt. In that case, chayiv. So at that point again, now that we have a machlokas, borrower is obligated to swear as to the value of the collateral. So Gemara says, mi nishba. Now, okay, so I ruined a little bit, but who's swearing? Who's swearing, right? So when you read this brisa, it's not immediately clear from the brisa who is swearing. So the Gemara says, Misha pikadon etzlo. So we'll say, who's swearing? The person with whom the deposit is by him. The Gemara says, now we'll say, so the bepashtos, it sounds like the lender, Shema yish bazeh v'yotziala sapikadon. We'll say, what are we concerned about? We're concerned that maybe, because if it's the borrower that's swearing, then lemaisa again, ultimately the lender could then could pull out the collateral afterwards. Okay, so the Gemara says, what are we talking about? Right, we'll say a lot going on over here. Sahia, which case are we referring to? Ilema aseifa. If you want to say it as referring to the seifa, the Gemara says the seifa clay, the shvua gabi malvehi. We just established that ultimately again it's the malve, it's the lender that's swearing. So the Gemara says the ha kamodi mixas hataina. Ultimately, because again it's a mod of a mixas case. Ela amar Shmuel areisha. Rather, Rabbi Shmuel says it's going on the reisha. So the Gemara says my areisha. Which reisha are we talking about? So the Gemara says my areisha. Sorry, my areisha de seifa. Sorry, a seifa de reisha. Sorry. So the Gemara says the second part of the first case. Selahil v'sicha alav. So remember again, lender is saying I lent you a selah. Shekel hayashava, and ultimately the collateral is only worth half that amount. I'll lend you $1,000. The collateral is worth $500. V'hala omer lo kila selahil v'sani alav shlosha dinar in hayashava, and the borrower says, you lent me $1,000, but the collateral itself is actually worth 3 dinarin. So the Gemara says, chayiv, the shvua gabe lovahu. So the Gemara says, so it's chayiv. Now both say, now in that case, technically speaking, it should be the lova, it should be the borrower that swears. Why? And this is how we read the brisa, because it's a motive b'mixas case. Technically speaking, it's partial admission, so it should be the lova that swears. But watch this. So the Gemara says, v'amar Rabbanan, l'shtavem malve shema yishave zev yotzi alas hapikadon. So both say this is actually very interesting. So both say, so in this case over here, we're essentially you have the lender admitting that the lender telling me that ultimately, again, I went ahead and I lent you money, and the collateral was worth half the value of the loan. And the borrower says, no, it wasn't worth half the value, it was worth a different amount. This is a motive b'mixas case, so we have a dispute about the amount of the collateral. So we'll say, b'pashtos, when you have a motive b'mixas case, so then it's going to be the borrower who swears. The rabbis did something very interesting in this case, which is they went ahead and they took the shvua from the borrower and put it on the lender. Why? What are we concerned about? We're concerned that if it's the lender that is if it's the borrower that is going ahead and swearing, what's going to happen after he swears? Maybe the lender really does have the collateral, and what is he going to do? He's going to say, tada, he's going to take it out afterwards, and it turns out that we just set up the borrower for a false oath. Therefore, in order to kind of streamline things, we take the shvua from the lover, from the borrower, and put it on the malva. Okay, so the Gemara says, V'im Isa, top of Lamed Hey. V'im Isa de Rafuna. Now remember again, what are we doing over here? So remember again, we are focusing on this position of Rav Huna. Rav Huna said that halacha lamaisa, even in a case where remember, going back to our Mishnah, even in a case where the shomer decides to go ahead and pay over swear, we still make him take an oath. What's the oath? Shavua she'ena bershusi. I swear that I do not have possession of this item. So the Gemara says, V'im Isa l'Ravuna. Now, if you hold ultimately again of Ravuna, Rashi says over here, Shashomer hamishalim damim nishpa she'ena bershuso. Right? That anytime, even if the shomer swears, even if the shomer pays, he still takes this shvua that the object is not in his possession. Why do we have to be concerned that ultimately, again, someone's going to pull out the item? After all, he already swore. So the Gemara says, Kevin the Mishtabe, Kevin the Mishtabe Malva She'ener Bershuso. So if the Malva ultimately is swearing that the object is not in his domain, Hechi Matzi Mapikle. So I don't understand if he's swearing, right? If Rav Huna is correct, and ultimately again the Malva is swearing that the object, remember again, so Rav Huna holds that even if you're paying, you're always going to swear that the object is not in your domain. Because we're concerned that maybe you want to keep it, you're justifying keeping it by paying for it. So if at the end of the day, according to Rav Huna, if the Malva is going to be swearing that he doesn't have the pikadon, the collateral in his domain, so what are we concerned about him subsequently pulling it out? So Amarava, Sheish Edim Shesarf, Shenisrafa. Interestingly enough, so the Gemara suggests maybe this is a case where the Malva is not going to swear. Why? Because there's independent corroboration that the collateral is no longer in existence. For example, there are witnesses that saw that it burnt. Ihachi mehecha maisila. Otherwise, at the end of the day, where is he going ahead and bringing it from? Ela Amar Rav Yosef, Sheish Edim Shenigneva. There are witnesses that it was stolen. Sof mehechi ma'isila. So that's fine. I will say. So once there's witnesses over here that either it was stolen or it was destroyed, so where is he bringing it from? To which the Gemara says the tarichu ma'isila. In a case where perhaps the object was stolen, so maybe einachinami, it could be that the malva exerted himself to track down the stolen object. Okay, ihachi ki mishtabe malva nami litrach lo bevelesi. So if that's the case, again, even when the malva does swear, maybe we should be concerned that the lova himself is going to go and track down the collateral. So which the Gemara says bishlama malva yada man kail v'nafik bebeisei va'azol v'tarachu ma'isila. So we'll say, I understand in a case where the collateral was stolen, the lender has the ability to potentially track that down. Why? We'll say, remember again, number one, who keeps collateral for the duration of the debt? It's the lender. Furthermore, again, if it was stolen by the lender knows who came in and out of his house during the last period of time. So if he wants to play like a shtickle Sherlock Holmes and track down the thief, he has a better chance of doing that. Love miyada man ayil v'nafik bebeisei demalva. Obviously, the borrower is not going in hers. If the collateral is stolen, the borrower really has zero chance of tracking that down because the borrower has absolutely no idea who is going ahead and coming in and out of the house of the lender. Okay, Abaye says Gzera Shema Yiton V'Yomer Lo Achar Shavua Mitzasiha. Abaye says, what are we concerned about over here? We're concerned about, say, over here, that if halacha l'maisa, remember, what's happening over here is, in these cases of moda b'miktsas, where let's say again is a partial admission on the part of the borrower about the value of the mashkon. So technically speaking, it should be the borrower that goes ahead and swears. What the Gemara tells us over here is a little halachic gymnastics. We go ahead and we switch the oath from the borrower and we put it on the lender. Right? What are we concerned about? We're concerned that if it's the borrower who swears, after the oath, the lender is going to take out the mashkon. Right? That's what we're concerned about. So Abaye says, Abaye says, because we're concerned over here that if we allow the borrower to go ahead and swear, that the lender will go ahead and say, he'll taina after the shvar, I didn't have it in my possession, I just found it. Meanwhile, again, the borrower has sweared for naught. Rav Ashi Amar, Zen Nishba v'Zen Nishba. So it's actually interesting. Rav Ashi says in these kind of cases, Rav say, everyone is swearing. Everyone is swearing, the malva and the lova, which is interesting. Zen Nishba she'ena b'shuso. So the malva, the lender, is going to swear that he does not have possession, ultimately, of the collateral. V'Zen Nishba kama hayashava. And the borrower is going to swear how much the collateral was worth. Okay, this is what it means to say, min nishpat chila. So this is interesting. So therefore, again, in Rav Ashi's model, everyone is swearing. Everyone is swearing. So the lender is going to swear that he doesn't have possession of it. The borrower is going to swear as to the value. So when the Gemara says, when the Brisa says, who's swearing? What is the Gemara asking? In other words, if both of them are swearing, so what is the shaila? This is actually very interesting. Min nishpat chila. Who swears first? Who goes first? So the Gemara says, Malva nishpat chila, Shema yishava zeh, v'yotzi ala sapikadon. So maybe we should say that the lender should swear first, because if the borrower swears first, what are we concerned about? That the lender is going to take out the pikadon. So the Gemara is right. So that's right. So who swears first? The lender swears first out of concern that if we let the borrower swear first, maybe the malva, maybe the lender really does have the pikadon, and of course that'll be problematic. Okay. So Rav Huna bar Tachlif mishmei de Rav Amar, Reisha de Seifa tiyufta de Rav Huna. So it comes along Rav Huna bar Tachlifa, and Rav Huna bar Tachlifa says that we'll say Rav Huna bar Tachlifa different than Rav Huna. So Rav Huna bar Tachlifa says that ultimately, again, the Reisha, the Seifa, the first case in the second part of the Brisa is a refutation to the position of Rav Huna. Which case? Sela helvisini alav. Right? Sela helvisini alav. Shtayim hayashava. Right? Ruvain says to Shimon, Ruvain's the lender, I lent you $1,000, and let's say again, the mashkon is worth 200. V'hala omer lo ki im v'hala omer lo kela sela helvisichi alav. Sorry, I said that wrong. Selahil visani alav shtaim hayashava. So this is the borrower. Borrower says to the lender, "You lent me $1,000, and the mashkon was worth, whatever, 200. Lender says, "No, not true. I lent you $1,000. We agree on that, but the mashkon was only worth 100." So we'll say, "What's the halacha?" Pater. Ultimately, again, there's no obligation of shvuah. Now, so now we'll say, if we really held like Rav Huna, that Allah say anytime you have something in your possession, you have to, even if you're going to exempt yourself through payment, you have to swear that the object is not in your possession. So migud de mishtabe malva shene bershuso, l'shtabe nami agilgul shvuah kama hayashava. So we'll say this is really interesting. So Rav Huna bar Tachlifa says, Rav Huna, you're wrong. It must be that you're wrong. Why? But say, think about this case for just a moment, right? So lender says, borrower, I lent you $1,000. Mashkon, the collateral was worth 200. Okay. Borrower says, I agree, you lent me $1,000, but ultimately, again, the collateral was worth $300. So I'll say, so in this case, the Brisa says, ultimately, pater from Shavua. So now Rav Huna bar Tachlifa says, Rav Huna, if you were right, there always, remember again, we'll say, according to Rav Huna, there's always a shvuah in these cases. What's the shvuah in these cases that always exists? Malveh, lender, swears the object is not in my domain. So watch this. Rav Huna bar Tachlifa says, Rabbi say, if lender is already going to be swearing to that effect, then what? Let's employ Gilgul shvuah. What's Gilgul shvuah? Once you're already swearing about A, we'll also go ahead and make you swear about B. So once you're already swearing that the object is not in your domain, let's go ahead and make you swear about the value of the object as well. So Rav Ashi said, I said this over from Rav Kahana, and he said to me, Tehei b'ma'amino. So we'll say we could be talking about a case where ultimately, again, it's interesting. Maybe this is a case where the Malva doesn't have to swear that he doesn't have the object in his domain. Why? Because it's a case where the borrower believes the lender. Interesting. Now, both say, now it doesn't believe him about the value, right? So they have machlokes about the value, but the lender believes the borrower when the borrower says that the collateral has been lost. Take a quick look at Rashi. Teheba ma'amino, it's like right across from Tosas Zavnor Atreche. So Rashi says, Teheba ma'amino, hadik tani pater, but ma'amino lo v'lamal v'she'ner b'shuso. So both say, this is interesting, right? So in other words, this could be a case where as much as there is a dispute about the value of the collateral, borrower believes lender that lender doesn't have it anymore. So I will say, so it could even be, even according to Rav Huna, who normally says that if you had an object in your possession and you're claiming it's not in your possession, you need to swear to that. You need to swear to that in a case where the borrower believes the lender, or in a case for that matter again, where the owner of the object believes the shomer, perhaps that obviates the need for that shvuah. Very interesting. So the Gemara says, well, if that's the case, I will say, so I don't understand. If we're talking about a case where the borrower believes the lender, so why not believe the lender as to the value of the collateral as well? To which the Gemara says, no, lo kimne bigave. I will say, the fact that there's a machlokes over here, it doesn't mean that the borrower feels that the lender is lying about the value of the collateral. It just could also mean that the borrower knows, like, the collateral belongs to me, I know the value of it. The lender does not know the value of it. So again, I will say, the machlokes over here doesn't have to be that lender thinks that borrower is a liar and borrower thinks that lender is a liar. Sometimes it's just legitimate machlokes over here. So it's interesting. So you can have a case where the borrower believes the lender enough to say, I don't need you to swear that the object is not in your domain. I believe you about that. But I think you're wrong when it comes to the value of the object. Not because I think you're lying, just because you don't know the value of my object like I know the value of my object. Very, very interesting. So the Gemara says, so we'll say, so if that's the case, we're talking about people who believe each other, why doesn't the lender believe the borrower as to the value of the collateral? Right? In other words, we will say, sometimes friends could have machlokes. And it's okay. It doesn't erode the friendship when there's a disagreement. Right? So again, if we're talking about a case where these two people obviously have a relationship to the point that borrower says to lender, I don't need you to take a shvur that the object is not in your domain. I believe you. I believe you. So I understand why the borrower is not going to believe the lender in terms of the value of the collateral, because the borrower could say it's my object. The lender doesn't know it like I know it. Okay, so why not say, why doesn't the borrower believe the lender about the value of the object? To which the Gemara says, and I will say, because trust doesn't always go both ways. Trust doesn't always go both ways. In other words, this could be a case of where ultimately, again, the borrower fully believes the lender. Therefore, I don't need you to take a shvur that it's in your possession, but I'm not going to believe you regarding the value of the collateral because it's my object, not yours. And it could just very well be a case where the lender doesn't feel that same level of credibility vis-a-vis the lender. So the Gemara asks here an interesting question. Why is it that perhaps the lova believes the malva, but the malva doesn't believe the lova, right? That the borrower will believe the lender, but the lender doesn't believe the borrower. What's the pshat with that? So we'll say, this is actually fascinating. So what's fascinating about this question in the Gemara is, as opposed to looking at this, which is the way we were looking at it before, just as like a one-off scenario, right? We're just trying to paint the case. The Gemara seems to understand this more like in a general sense, that there is a greater trust that the borrower has in the lender than the lender has in the borrower. Why is that? To which the Gemara says, Love mekayim be b'malva, Tumas Yisharim Tanchem. So Tumas Yisharim Tanchem. So we'll say this is interesting. So the borrower, when he looks, it's interesting. I'll say when the borrower looks at the lender, what does he see? What does he see? Someone who is successful. Obviously, if I'm in the position to lend, so that means I have the resources. If I have the resources, that means, again, I've achieved some level of material success. The way the world works is that often when we see materially successful people, we assume that they must have done something right to have encountered that level of material success. So I'll say, so again, I want to be clear. Lav dafka that this is actually correct theologically. The Gemara is giving us a window into how people think. So when the Lova looks at the Malva, he's like, oh, Baruch Hashem, guy's got money. Guy's got money. So if a guy has money, Tumas Yisharim Tanchem, which literally means the perfection or the wholeness of the Yisharim, of the people who are straight or upright, will lead them. So in other words, we'll say the way the world works is sometimes I assume that if a person has material success, that is a blessing from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And why does a person get that blessing if not for the fact that they must be upstanding? Upstanding. So we'll say, so that's why often the Lova will trust the Malva, because it's almost as if, it's interesting. I will say, again, I want to be clear, this is not necessarily the way the world works. There are plenty of people with money who are not credible, who are not trustworthy, who are not good people. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu blessed them with material success for whatever the plan that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has. This is a window into the way people operate. If you have money, you're gebenched. If you're gebenched, it must mean that you're a good guy. Otherwise, why would HaKadosh Baruch Hu give you this money? Conversely, Malva b'kaim belova v'selef bogdim yishtem. So I will say, so interestingly enough, so I will say, so when the Malva in the lender looks at the borrower, what does he see? Someone who's compromised financially, right? Someone who doesn't have. So I guess divine favor is not shining on you so much. So what's going on with you? So I will say, it's also interesting how in general people take a very one-dimensional approach to like how the world works. If you have money, that's a bracha from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you must be doing the right thing. You don't have money, that's a punishment from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you must be doing the wrong thing. So we'll say, so again, this is how the world works. This is how people look at things. Chazal not at all telling us that this is accurate. But again, just b'metzias. That's why often the borrower is willing to put more credibility in the lender, and the lender is willing to put less credibility in the borrower. Okay, so we'll say, I just want to point out over here, actually, let's go back to a little bit before we get to Halacha Maisa. Ho Gavra. So here we go. Ho Gavra. The Afkid Kipi Gabi Chavre. What's the interesting case over here? There was a guy, we'll call him Ruvain. Ruvain deposited bracelets with Shimon. Okay. Amarle, we'll say first white line. Amarle, Havle Kipi. So Ruvain comes back to Shimon. He says, give me back my bracelets. So what happens? Amarle, Lo Yedana Hecha Osvinu. So Shimon says, you know what? I don't know where they are. I don't know there. So this is an interesting statement, right? So in other words, Shimon's not saying, I lost it, it was stolen, it was this. Shimon's like, you know what, I just don't know where they are. So Asla Kamed Rav Nachman. So I'll say, see, here's the shayla, like, we haven't really studied that claim of a shomer saying, I don't know where I put it, right? So what is that? So Asla Kamed Rav Nachman, so they came before Rav Nachman, Amarle, Kol Lo Yedana Pshiusahi. So Rav Nachman said in general, any case of lo yadana, if you say you don't know, I don't know is pshia. That's negligence. That's negligence. So I will say, so again, therefore, obviously, Shimon, the shomer, is going to be chayiv. Zil shlim. So Shimon, go pay Reuven for the value of the bracelets. So the Gemara said, lo shlim. So what happened? Shimon didn't pay. Shimon didn't pay. So I will say, you know what? Actually, before we go on to this, I realize this is new sugya. So I just want to close out. So I will say, so what should you take from this entire previous sugya? Just one simple takeaway. We paskin like Rav Huna. That is the takeaway of this. So therefore, I will say again, if you close out kind of this first unit of halacha, I deposit, right? I go over to Reuven, I say, Reuven, watch my cow. Reuven is my shomer chinam. I come back, Reuven says, I'm so sorry, it was lost. It was lost. I say, Reuven, okay, just swear to that claim. Reuven says, I don't want to swear, I just want to pay. I don't want to take a shvuah. No problem. Reuven gives me $1,000 for the cow. Shalom al Yisrael. Rav Huna says, well, not so quick. Reuven still has to swear. What's the oath? Shvuah she'ena birshusi. I don't have the cow. Cow is not in my possession. So I both say that is how we pass halacha l'maisa. And so interestingly enough, it turns out that even though you swear, even though you're paying, and payment exempts you from oath. Now, what oath does payment exempt you from? So remember, the oath I would have taken, Reuven would have taken as a shomer is, I swear I was not negligent with this animal, or I swear that it was lost and I was not negligent. Even though you're exempted from that oath, you still have need the Rav Huna oath of shvuah she'ena birshusi. Okay, now back to this case. So I'll say, so now what happens? So the Beis Din ruled Shimon is liable because saying I don't know where the object that was deposited in me with is pshia. It's negligence. So therefore, again, Shimon pay. Shimon didn't pay. Lo shlim. Shimon didn't pay. So what happened? Lo shlim. Azur Rav Nachman agbe la'apadne mine. So we'll say what happens. So Rav Nachman went ahead and seized Shimon's mansion. Padne is a mansion. Okay, he seized his home. He seized assets. He seized an asset. He seized Shimon's home in order to satisfy the debt. Okay, l'sof ishtachach kipi. So as I say, interestingly enough, they found the bracelet. Sometime later on, Shimon found the bracelet. Ve'iyakar, and interestingly enough, the price of the bracelets, value of the bracelets, appreciated. So we're saying, now watch this. Amar Rav Nachman, Hadri kipi lebarayhu, v'hadra apadna limara. So Rav Nachman says, okay, beautiful. So Shimon, give back the bracelets to Reuven, and Reuven, give back the house to Shimon. Okay? Amar Rava, Havi Yisidna Kamid Rav Nachman, Uparkin HaMafkid Hava. So Rava says, I was sitting in front of Rav Nachman, and we were learning Parak HaMafkid. Incredible. We're learning Parak HaMafkid. Va'amilei, Shilem v'lo ratza lishava, v'lo ahadali. And I asked about the following situation. What happens in a case of ultimately, again, someone who pays, but is unwilling to go ahead and take the oath? Rashi says over here, "V'amrilei shilem v'lo ratza l'shava katani masnisin dikani kfela v'hainami shilem v'likni rav chadayakar." Now, here's what's interesting. So Rava was really asking Rav Nachman like this. If you go back to our Mishnah, right? They say, "What's our Mishnah?" Again, I deposit my cow with Reuven. I come back to collect it. Reuven says, "So sorry, it was stolen." Reuven pays. He doesn't want to swear. Bless you. Reuven pays. He doesn't want to swear. Fine. We'll say sometime later on they track down the Ganav. The Ganav pays kefel. Who gets the kefel? Who gets the kefel? Who gets the kefel? Reuven, right? The shomer. Reuven the shomer, because ultimately by paying, he's acquired the object. Rava posited, in this case over here, where I remember again, in this case, right, Reuven gave Shimon the bracelets. Shimon said, I don't know what happened to it. So what happened? We seized payment from Shimon. So Rava was suggesting that essentially once you seized payment from Shimon, Shimon became the owner of the bracelets. If that's the case, the value of the appreciation of the bracelets should really belong to Shimon. To which the Gemara says, "V'lo ahadar." So ultimately, again, Rava said, I said this over in front of Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman didn't answer me. V'shaper avad lo ahadar li. And the truth is, now I understand why Rav Nachman didn't answer me. Why didn't he answer me? My timer. Hasam lo atrechele beidina, hacha atrechele beidina. So it's very interesting. The cases are very different. When is the owner of the object? When is he makneh? Either what we'll call future appreciation of future rights, when the shomer doesn't drag him to Beis Din. So in appreciation for quick resolution of the matter, the owner essentially is makneh future rights of the object, right? I'll give you the object, so if there's kefa, if there's arba vechamisha, appreciation is all yours. In this case, we'll say over here, remember, Reuven deposited the bracelets with Shimon. Shimon said, I don't know what happened to it. They had to go to Beis Din, right? Then afterwards, again, even after Shimon was ordered to pay, what happened? Shimon didn't pay. Beis Din had to seize assets. It's a whole Megillah over here. It's a whole Megillah. So because ultimately, again, Shimon went ahead and protracted the process, therefore, again, Reuven is not makneh him anything. And therefore, even though the bracelet's appreciated, we give the appreciated bracelets back to Reuven, the house back to Shimon, and Shalom HaYisrael. Now, Bosai, this raises a very interesting point. Lameimer, the Savarav Nachman, the Shuma Hadar. So, Bosai, this is absolutely rivetingly fascinating. Why? Because Bosai, what does this tell you? Shuma. Now, what's Shuma? Shuma means when Beis Din makes a valuation of property in order and seizes it in order to satisfy debt. So we'll say, let's watch what's happened over here, right? Reuven deposited his bracelets with Shimon. Comes back to collect them. Shimon says, I'm sorry, I don't know what I did with it. Pshia, negligence. Beis Din rules, Shimon, you have to compensate Reuven for the bracelets. Shimon doesn't do anything. What did Beis Din do? Seize assets, gives it to Shimon. Gives it to Reuven. Now both say, the bracelets are then found. How did Rav Nachman paskin? How did Rav Nachman paskin? Give back the seized property to Shimon and give back the bracelets to Reuven. So both say, does Rav Nachman hold? This is actually a very dramatic halacha. So I guess Rav Nachman holds that when Beis Din seizes property, if for some reason the contested item is later on found, we give back the item and we take back, in other words, we claw back the seized property and give it back to the debtor. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. To which the Gemara says, Remember the Sarah Nachum the Shuma Hadar, Shiny Hasam the Shuma Betaos Havi, Tikahavi Kibi Meikara. Maybe this case is different. Why about say? Because it turned out, by the way, the bracelets, were in Reuven's we're in his dining room the whole time. So the whole thing was a mistake. Remember again, this wasn't a case of lost or stolen. This was a case of where Shimon didn't know where the bracelets were. So this was a Shuma Betos. It was a seizure, an unnecessary seizure. Maybe that's why it returns. So we'll say now this is interesting. So the Nardoim say that halacha l'maisa Shuma goes back up to 12 months. If there's seized property, and then it turns out that the contested object or lost object is found, so ultimately we give back the object to the owner, and the owner returns the seized property as long as all of this occurs within the first 12 months. After 12 months, the Nardoim say everything vests. So a member said, I don't know, I'm from Narda, and I say you return seized property forever. The halacha is Shuma Hadra li Olam. Seized property is returned forever. Why? Mishum shenemar va'asisa hayashar v'hatov. Because the pasuk says you should do that which is right in the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now I will say, this is a dramatic halacha. So this is how the Rambam paskins, that in a case where property was seized in order to satisfy a debt, an outstanding debt, if sometime later on, either the object is found or money is tendered, ultimately, again, borrower, debtor, shomer, whoever the property was seized from, has the ability to reclaim seized property. Which I will say is a really pretty dramatic halacha, which means kind of if you are given seized property, it's almost like you're a little bit limited in terms of what you're doing with it, because halacha l'maisa, the borrower, debtor, shomer, whoever the property was seized from, if he comes back and offers cash or offers the lost object, halacha l'maisa, you have to give back the property. Why? We'll say it's interesting. What's the makar for this? V'asisa hayashar v'atov. Do the right thing. It's interesting. Again, tomorrow we'll go a little bit more into this. But do the right thing. Do the right thing. It's appropriate that if property was seized, and now again the person who it was seized from is making good on his obligation through money, give him back his property. Incredible. So Pshita, Shomali Balchov, Va'azoli V'Shomali Balchov Didei, So let's listen to this. If let's say again, right, so in this case over here, let's just use Ruvain, right? Ruvain's one of the bracelets, right? So now they went ahead and they gave seized property to Ruvain, and now Ruvain himself had a creditor. He gives the property to his creditor. So obviously, if Ruvain the creditor received seized property and Ruvain gave it to his creditor, and now Shimon comes back with the bracelets, so now again, Abosai, Ruvain's creditor is no stronger than Ruvain. So the same way that the property could be taken back by Shimon once he tenders payment from Ruvain, he could also take it back ultimately from Ruvain's creditor as well. Zabna arta v'yava matana vade hani meikara adaita de aranachas v'lava adaita de zuzenachas. Now, both say, here's what's interesting. Let's say Ruvain the creditor gets, or Ruvain the owner of the bracelets gets this property, this seized property, and then what happens? Ruvain sells it. Ruvain sells it, or he goes ahead and gifts it, or ultimately again, or he dies and it's inherited. So we'll say in that case, it cannot be clawed back by the borrower, shomer, or whoever else it was seized from. In other words, so we'll say, so once the property has either been sold, gifted, or inherited, then halacha l'maaseh it transforms into a regular possession and can't be clawed back. Very interesting halacha. So the Gemara says, Shamolei le'isha ve'insaba. So we'll say, what happens ultimately again if it was valuated for a woman and she got married? O shama mina de'isha ve'insaba, or for that matter again, property was seized from her and then she got married, right? The insuba umesa, she got married and then she died. So so remember again, a husband is considered to be a purchaser in his wife's property. So either we don't take it back from him or we don't return it to him. So in Usha they instituted that a woman who goes ahead and sells her nichsei milug, which is, remember again, nichsei milug is property that she brings into the marriage. She retains title, but the husband has usage. The husband is considered to be a purchaser vis-a-vis that property, and even has the ability to extract it from people whom she sells it to. Amud Beis. So I just want to point out what's happening over here. So on one hand, we really have two halachas that are unfolding over here. Halacha number one, I will say, is that if Beis Din seizes property in satisfaction of the debt, and then it's given to the creditor, to the owner of the object, whoever it is, and then sometime later on, the borrower, shaliach, whoever it is, has money and comes back to the person whom the seized property was given and offers money, the present owner of the seized property has to return the property. So again, let me just illustrate this in the simple way that we were doing it, right? Ruvain deposited bracelets with Shimon. Shimon gave him bracelets. Shimon says, I don't know where they are. So what happens? Shimon doesn't have money. We seize property from Shimon, give it to Ruvain. If sometime later on, Shimon finds the bracelets, or Shimon comes up with cash and comes back to Ruvain, Shimon has a right to demand back his seized property. That's the halacha. What's the caveat? The caveat is if Ruvain has sold that property, right? Or if Ruvain has gifted that property, or if Ruvain died and his children inherited that property, that's it. There's no reclamation, right? There's no ability to reclaw that back or to reclaim that. Because now, what happens is, if there was a sale, if there was a gift, or if there was an inheritance, so transactionally that property has changed and cannot be reclaimed by Shimon. That's the halacha. Fine. Agbe iyu b'chovo. Shabbos says, so what happens? Ultimately, again, if he collects it in his debt, take a look at the top Rashi. Rashi says over, Agbe iyu b'chavo, le'el mehader gabi shuma, kilomar im lo shamuha Beis Din l'malva al karcho shalova, v'kam le me'atzma v'lo tricho. Shabbos say, what happens in a case? Let's take the same Ruvain and Shimon case, right? Ruvain deposited the bracelets. Shimon ultimately, again, doesn't have them. Let's say instead of Beis Din, Shimon just gives Ruvain his property. Right? He gives him his house. I don't know where the bracelets are. Here's my house. So now the shaila is, if now Shimon finds the bracelets or Shimon comes into money, could Shimon go back and reclaim his property from Ruvain? So the Gemara says, so pligi barav achav ravina, chad amar hadra, v'chad amar lo hadra. One opinion says that Shimon can reclaim it. One opinion says that Shimon can't reclaim it. Man damar lo hadra, the one who says he can't reclaim it, savar hai zivini me al yehi tamidaiti dinafshi agbe. So this is interesting. So the opinion that says that Shimon can't reclaim it, you know why? This almost has the status of a sale. Why does it have the status of a sale? Since Shimon willingly, of his own volition, gave the property to Ruvain, this has a transactional status of a sale. And remember again, a sale can't be reclaimed. Uman Damar Hadra, the opinion that says that you can't reclaim it, Man Damar Hadra, the one who says you can reclaim it, Savar, Lo Zvini Me'al. No, this is not a sale. So why did Shimon give it of his own volition? Shimon was embarrassed. And he didn't want to have to be dragged to Beis Din for a whole adjudication of this case. So we'll say, by the way, how do we paskin in that situation? So we paskin in that case where halacha l'maisa, Shimon, right? Shimon, who's in this case the shomer of the bracelets, where he willingly gives the property to Ruvain, the Rambam paskins that does have the status of a sale, and therefore again cannot be clawed back, cannot be reclaimed. Interesting. Let's go back there. So the Gemara says, good. So I'll say in general, so let's go back in a general sense. If halacha l'maisa Beis Din has a word, let's just keep with our case of Reuven and Shimon, right? Reuven deposited the bracelets, come to Shimon, I don't know where they are, right? He has to pay. Beis Din sees his property, gives property of Shimon to Reuven in satisfaction of the value of the bracelets. Fine. At what point does Reuven now have the ability to use or to benefit from the peiros of the land? Peiros of the land. Ume'emas achal peri. Rab Amar Michi Matya ad karta liyadei. So Rabbi says, as soon as Reuben gets the ad karta. So we'll say ad karta. Rashi says over here is the document of collection. That is the document that says that Reuven is hereby entitled to seize property from Shimon in satisfaction of his debt. The moment he gets that document, that's the moment he's entitled to peiros. Abayi says, Eidav bechasumav zachenlo. Not at the moment he goes ahead and not at the moment that he gets the document, but rather again the moment that the document is signed by witnesses. Okay? So the Gemara says, Rava Amar Michi Shlemo Yimei Achrasta. So we'll say Rava says, no, after the days of announcement are made. So we'll say, see, here's what's interesting. So remember when Beis Din would go ahead and seize property or sell property, so there was a whole announcement process. They would announce it in order to go ahead and generate interest amongst buyers. Okay, so after those days of announcement are over, that's when he gets Tita Pera. So we'll say, so therefore Aloch Lamaisa, three different opinions. So we'll say, just for our purposes, right? For our purposes, we emerge with three very important nuggets of halacha l'maisa. Nugget one, Rafuna, that even when a shomer decides to pay and not swear, he still has to swear. What does he have to swear? That ultimately I do not have the object in my possession. Nugget number two, which I guess really four nuggets. Nugget number two is that in general, the lova trusts the malva more than the malva trusts the lova. Okay, this is an interesting idea. Nugget number three, shuma hadar li'olam. That at the end of the day, that when Beis Din sees his property in satisfaction of that and gives that to the owner, lender, creditor, whoever it is, if at some point in time the borrower shomer comes with sufficient funds, he has a right to claw back his property. However, if the recipient of the seized property either sold it, gifted it, or died so his children inherited it, that's it, transactionally it's closed, it's done. And nugget number four is at some point, even before taking actual possession of the field, the creditor, the person who's receiving the seized property is entitled to peiros. Machlokes says exactly when. Okay, beautiful Mishnah. So we'll say this is a really interesting case. I lend my cow to Ruvain. Fine. No problem. What happens? Ruvain lends it to someone else. Right? He sublets. And what happens? Now, again, whether that's legal or not, we have to see. So I'll say, so now what happened? So now I'll say, I want to point out what's happening. There's two different transactional relationships over here. I rented my cow to Ruvain. Ruvain lent it to Shimon. While it was with Shimon, it died. Mesa Kedarka, it died. That was saying I was right. So what's talacha? So I'll say, so interestingly enough, a shoel is going to be chayiv for everything, right? The shoel is chayiv for everything, right? A socher, a borrower, is exempt when the animal dies of natural causes. So watch this. So Yeshava Zocher Shemesa Kedarka. So I'll say, so what happens? So Ruvain, the person who rented it from me, he swears that the animal died of natural causes. And I will say, and ultimately again, now Ruvain is pater vis-a-vis me. Vashoel Yishalim L'Socher. But Shimon has to pay Ruvain the value of the item. So we'll say, so I, the owner of the item, get nothing, but Ruvain, who rented it from me and then subsequently lent it to someone else, he gets paid back. He gets paid back by Shimon. So Rabbi Yosef says, what are you talking about? No. Rabbi Yosef says that is not fair. Ruvain has no right to do any kind of business with my animal. That's not the way it works. And therefore, the cow is returned to me. Rabbi say, now what that last phrase means, we'll have to see. So I'm going to So we'll say ultimately again, how was the so? We'll say, we'll stop over here for today. We'll pick up with the Gemara tomorrow. All right, we're good. We'll pick up with the Gemara tomorrow. We'll say shkoyach. We'll always make it through. Good. All right, Chevron Zoom. Have a wonderful day, everyone.